This is Kenya's the number one opera in the world, according to Thorin. You're watching Thorin channel, that are also known as the number one existence fan in the world.
Right, this is going to be another episode of Talk to Thorin, and my guest here is Alex. You probably know him best as the in-game leader of Vitality, which at one point in time last year was the number 2 team in the world rankings, and also holds the notable distinction of being the only team at one point in time to actually be able to beat Team Liquid when Team Liquid was just tearing everyone's arse up. So, one thing that's going to be weird about this interview is technically Alex is still in Vitality, but we'll get to that at the end of the interview. We'll talk about what that means and what could be going on in the future. So to start out with, I wanted to actually jump back in time a bit, because even though, like I explained there, like you've gone to a pretty high level in CS, you're so fresh actually on the scene of tournaments I've been going to. Like I remember a while back when I was following my boy Existence, you were in the LDLC team with him, but that was all tier 2 lands, you know. That was like, for example, you guys were still going to ASWC when people don't even know ASWC is still a thing anymore. So like when you were in that LDLC team back then, obviously you weren't the in-game leader, Existence was the in-game leader. Can you give us some thoughts about playing in that team? I mean, it feels like ultimately, because of the value of the name value of, you know, Maniac, Existence, people think the team didn't live up to expectations. What was it like internally though?
So I was in LDLC for 3 years, I think. And going back to the original team was with Existence, and yeah, it was a weird one because he just came out of G2, and I feel like it was the first time he'd been kicked from a team, and he kind of wanted to take control of everything, and so it couldn't happen again. And it was quite weird because he was still like a good in-game leader, but I think the kick from G2 just changed him, and it was kind of a weird one because I was expecting to go in there and learn loads of stuff with him and like have an example of how you should be as a professional player, and it wasn't always the case. And yeah, but it was fun, and I learned a lot from him. Yeah.
One of the things people often say about him, like the criticism basically, is people think because they hear he's a super tactical guy and they know that he played Source a long, long time ago, even though Astralis is super tactical and we all know we love all what they do, people suggest like it's kind of outdated. Is there something a bit outdated about his thinking about the game, his vision of what like for example, does he think an IGL should be the guy who controls every detail and people can't make calls? Where does that come down?
I wouldn't say that he wants to control everything in game. We had responsibilities. But ultimately, I just feel like he had his vision of how CS should be played and like what tactics were working. And yeah, we just never really updated our game, and he never updated the way he saw things. And for example, we were running like the same chat coming out of Door on Cash for like 3 years in a row, I think it was. And I mean, it worked, but it's just an example of the thing that we never really updated.
Sure.
And it was kind of the same story with stuff that wasn't working as well. Not to say that he wasn't working on new things, it was just always in the same approach and the same mindset, and that wasn't working.
Okay. Right. Beyond that, you then had the lineup where he was kicked from the team. And if you remember, initially, like some people were, because the storyline of that team was like, basically the only result people cared about, like I said, they didn't really care about the tier 2 lands. They cared about where you guys actually had that like an 8-8 record in EPL or whatever. Like you actually did like way better than you probably should have with the right level of teams that were in EPL. So when you basically got kicked not that long after that, from what I remember, people were kind of outraged because they were like, what the hell? Like, you know, he brought you guys up, you were nothing without him. And so it felt like people basically almost like were loving the fact that LDLC was kind of like, you didn't do that much after that. What was the period after that? Because the weird thing is, the jump in the story that never made sense to me is how out of nowhere you just ended up in Vitality, because you hadn't, it's not like you were the guy popping off in all the games or whatever, and you weren't even brought in as the IGL initially. So what was that period after that like?
So after we removed Existence, we had Devil, I think, come in.
That makes sense.
I think it was Devil at that time.
Well, he might have already been there, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I can't remember who came in, but Devil started in game leading anyway. And it never really took off. I don't think I was quite a big like personality or character in the team, and at that time I was like one of the better players in the team, and when I didn't agree with things that the way we're playing and other things, and other players didn't agree, it just kind of, there was some friction there, and it just didn't really work out with Devil. I mean, he's a top guy and works hard and is quite good, but yeah, we just didn't match on how we wanted to play. And then from there, we just so we didn't do well. I think we got relegated from EPL, and that's where like we decided to change everything. I initially wasn't supposed to be part of the team with Amanek and DevaJuvek that came in. I was supposed to be replaced, and Dev was supposed to be in game leading there. But Devil said that he wanted to take a break, and so I was brought back into that team and became in-game leader of that team at that point, and we really took off from there. Really, I mean, we didn't win anything like notable for someone like you, but we're winning every tier 2 event that we went to.
Okay.
And then we had the Chicago run, obviously, where we made it to quarters, and we were winning like 14-5 against Liquid,
Sure.
one map up. And we managed to lose that somehow, so we didn't win. But yeah, and then from there I was brought into Vitality because I think deep down, maybe the coach knew that like MBK wasn't made for in-game leading, and I don't know, that wasn't what I was told at the time, but that's how I feel like now. And they brought me in knowing that at some point they would probably need to switch it out. Yeah.
Okay, along those lines then, when you came into the team, like I say, you came in replacing Happy, and if people don't know, because obviously if someone's an old school fan, they're going to think, oh, IGL for IGL. Like, Happy wasn't the IGL of that team. The whole point of that team, in fact, the whole reason why MBK basically got kicked from G2 is he wanted to be the in-game leader. I mean, it's been something he's really wanted to try a few times in his career, and for whatever reason, even though he has tried it a few times, he always feels like he's never gotten like full buy-in from his team, or they never gave him the proper chance. And so I feel like he never got it out of his system, basically. And so when you came into this team, like you say here, I mean, you kind of nailed it, right? Even though you were brought in initially not as the in-game leader, there has to be, the coach has to, on some level, have been thinking like in the future of like, what if the MBK move doesn't work? Because basically that did happen behind the scenes, right? The interesting thing, if people don't know, is there was never a public announcement that you were the in-game leader. It literally only came out quite a while later. In fact, I remember I found out from you. I actually think I just messaged you sometime, and you basically told me, oh yeah, I actually call on most of the maps. I think it was everything except Inferno or something. So what was the transition to becoming the in-game leader like?
So I think it was after the major, I think it was, where we like kind of crashed and burned on against was it an IP? I think they like 16-1 us on Mirage or something in the last map of a best of 3 to qualify to quarterfinals. And after that, I was basically asked if I can do in-game leading on T sides on every map originally, and then I wasn't playing Inferno with LDLC, so I didn't really have any experience in game leading on that map, and so MBK remained in game leader on T sides of that map, and we kind of divided it between CT and T sides, which was, this is MBK's vision of how we can perfect in-game leading and tactics, because one person can concentrate fully on one side and the other can concentrate fully on the other side. So that's how that happened, really.
Okay. Is there a reason why he was like the CT side caller? Does he have some special mind for setups or something? Like, because you know, like to a fan, they don't actually know there is anything that IGL does on the CT side. Like, they think it's just like, you know, players play off each other and you shoot people in the head.
Well, that's going to really depend on teams, right? I think the Swedish guys are kind of in that vibe. Maybe Astralis as well, who are very reaction based. I'm not sure though. But yeah, we had at least lots of CT side setups where we'd like have as if we're on T side, we'd have a set round that everyone knows what they're doing, at least for like the first 30 seconds, 45 seconds, and we'd move away from that. The reason basically was because MVK wasn't doing well as a T side in game leader. That was our worst side on most maps, and that's the reason they asked me to do that, I think.
Is there anything you can kind of like explain to us about that? Because one of the reasons why, even though like people will probably know I'm one of the main critics of him as an in-game leader, but what people never understand is because I've seen him try it a few times, and it's just the outcome in the server didn't work. But I always understood why he thought it made sense. Like he's always been like the closest person on his team to all the IGLs. He actually is a really intelligent guy about the game. He's also got, if people don't know, an amazing work ethic. Like he does want to study all the games and figure out what's going wrong. And if the tournament goes wrong, he does want to like go back over the VODs, etc., and get people to do team meetings, stuff that he could never do in some of the teams he was in. So I get that, like, it seems like he's checking a lot of the boxes, but somehow it never translated in the server. So what do you think was off?
I think what was off was he was schooled by Existence on how to in-game lead, and they shared the same vision, at least for T sides and probably other CT sides as well, as to how things are supposed to be run, like the same vision, the same tactical approach, and it didn't work for Existence, and it wasn't working for MBK. So, yeah.
How would you describe if we're going to contrast it then, what is Alex's style like? Because I mean, I know one thing that's very interesting to me about the fact that Astralis is the best team the last few years is that really Counter-Strike was moving away from that. Like a lot of the teams, it was either a mixture of like you said about the Swedish teams, you either just play off defaults, at which point in time people are just using their skill and the fact that they've played together and they kind of know each other, or people are playing like Karrigan styles, a bit more like you just have a whole bunch of base tactics that all look the same, and then you try and just be the genius who's like, right, we're going to do this one, you know, you make a call mid-round or something. So what is Alex's approach to CS in that regard?
So we had the base strats like Karrigan has, and we also, so what I came in and tried to change was the fundamentals of how we play, and meaning that if we're in a said situation, we know how we're going to react and we know how to win the round, like percentage-wise. I brought in a very percentage style of Counter-Strike that kind of suited us, to be honest, because the French scene has been notorious for the 4-1 happy on one side. So I kept that, but tried to, I mean, with the coach obviously who helped me out a lot, I'm tried to just be better at it and have those base strats where we would never be able to. The team, like the opposite team, isn't supposed to know what we're doing. We're going to have the same set nades and just vary everything off of like 3 sets of nades that we have on different maps, and just vary everything from there. And yeah, mid-round calls if we see that we're like not in the right position, then yeah, just try and play percentage a lot more like Astralis tried to do.
Now, one of the ways me and you were able to kind of connect a bit more was when you've had a couple of moments where in interviews or on Twitter you've said something and then people have basically, they don't know the context of what you're saying and they've taken it, like basically anything to do with Ziwu, unless you just like kiss his feet and say, he's a god and I'm shit, he carries me, like people just get really angry because they think like, he's just carrying you and you're disrespecting him. So I thought we could get into some of that, but you could give us the real context and your side of it. That's why I wanted to do an interview. So one thing I wanted to ask was, one of the most notorious things you said was once Ziwu was really rolling and you were the IGL and you were like the number 2 team in the world, famously you said in the interview something along the lines of like, you don't know why people go on and on about Ziwu because, you know, like you're setting him up with flashes and stuff. Now, here's the thing. You can see, as I just alluded to, why since his stats are so amazing and the eye test looks amazing, people are going to think you're disrespecting his skills there. But I have to say, and I've talked to a bunch of analysts, the ones who actually went and watched the demos, they say actually that they agree, especially on CT side, that you definitely give that guy a lot of step. And on T side, wasn't often he was the first person going in, I will say that. So how can you kind of explain it so it doesn't sound like you're dissing Ziwu? Like how was he set up in Vitality?
Yeah, obviously, I was never going to diss Ziwu. Like, we're very good friends outside of the game. And I mean, he knew what I meant when I said it. Yeah, so basically, I mean, everyone knows that Ziwu is the star player of Vitality. And so the idea was that we would just, like T-sides, as you mentioned, you'd rarely see him go in first. Like, I think he goes in first a lot more now on the new team. But my idea was just get this guy into a situation, like, if it's a 4v3, then we're probably going to win like 100% of the time if he's alive. And if it's a 2v3, then we probably have a lot more percentage chance of winning if he's alive than if he's dead, right? So that was my approach. Just get this guy into situations where he will win rounds because that's how good he is. I know. And it's not, and like, this is why I don't understand why people were saying that I was dissing him, because I literally we put him in situations where we know how good he is, so we're going to stick him in this situation so that he can show how good he is. Like,
they put all the resources into him, yeah.
Yeah, and CT sides, yeah, obviously I played a lot with him, like on bomb sites or in positions where we would just play together, and I would just spend most of my time either like asking him, okay, what do you want to do? Or I'd be telling him, okay, we need to do this. Or I'd be saying, like, just do that and I'll flash for you. Or if I'm dead, I would spend a lot of time on his POV and just be like, okay, watch out here. Your friends have got this. Right. Just so he can really concentrate on killing people. Like, and obviously he has the game sense that when he's in like a 1v2 or a 2v3, he has the game sense and he'll win the round like 90% of the time because it's Ziwu, right?
Does that mean, because I mean, that I have to say that one thing that makes me immediately think of is the most bizarre thing about Ziwu that I've never seen with any other player is even simple when he was like a god. He was still very good when he was 17, but he didn't have the whole game sense, etc. I've never seen a player that young. Is this part of the reason why? I mean, he obviously was surrounded by a lot of veterans. Did you kind of like level him up a bit in those regards?
He has an insane game sense. Like, as an individual, like if he's alone, in a situation, I don't need to. We don't need to say anything. He's just gonna do his thing, and he knows what he needs to do. But at least at the start, like let me think, like Starladder in Shanghai, where he didn't know how to play Dust 2, right? So I spent a lot of time making sure that he was in the right positions, and that was a trend that really followed through the rest of our time together, where I'd just be making sure that he's in the right position, and obviously the others as well. But I'm not gonna lie, I concentrated more making sure that Zai was in the right position to win us around, right? So he definitely has an insane amount of game sense, but I think we helped him as a team in that regard as well. Yeah.
Do you actually think, forgetting like Player of the Year awards and that sort of thing, do you think that he is the best player? Is he the best CS:GO player in your opinion?
It's a tough one because obviously Simple is amazing. I just feel like Simple has been around a lot longer than Zaiwu, and
Sure.
Once they've played the same amount of time at a top level, I think Zaiwu will be better. I think right now they're very, very close, but the experience that Simple has pushes him like maybe a bit above. And I mean, last year Zaiwu was ahead of him, right? But when he has the experience, I don't think Simple will be able to match him.
Okay, to ask about some of the other members in the team, let's do the MBK one. So obviously MBK eventually got kicked from the team, right? Is that just based on his individual performance? Was there any factor of like, because it was implied by some people, like maybe he had like disagreements with you or the coach or something, because the way he was kicked was kind of so out of nowhere. I mean, as far as I know from him as well, I think it was out of nowhere. I think he literally like the next day after the major was like, what the fuck? Like, so can you give us some thoughts as to like, why was he transitioned out of the team?
So we had problems, so myself and the coach and most of the other players actually had a different opinion on how we should be running the team. And MBK, when he was captain and in-game leader, he wanted to do his things his way, right? So when we didn't agree with him, there was obviously a conflict there at some point where we're like 5 of us are not going to do what he wants because we don't agree with it. At which point the team wanted him to be like remove the captaincy from him and just have him as a player, and switch in-game leading and the captaincy over to me, which he didn't agree with. So we tried to make it work as like we didn't have a captain for a while. We just had like him and me in game leading on each side, and that was it. And there was no Glaive or no Carrigan to the team.
Okay.
And I felt, well, I mean, we kind of all felt that we lacked, like when we were losing, we just didn't have anyone to turn to. We like the coach, but the coach can't talk most of the time in game, so we just had no one to turn to and no one to look at and be like, okay, he's going to show us a way to win. So we never really wanted to kick MBK, and it was never the plan until the major where some, like, there was an incident involving him and something during a game, and yeah, that's why he got removed. We never really wanted to remove him for his individual performance. We felt that he could be doing better, but we never wanted him to leave the team or to remove him for that reason.
How would you have described his role when he was in the team, like specifically as an individual player? Because obviously he's done so many over his career.
When he was with us, so he was anchoring a bomb site, and it was pretty nice knowing that you could just leave him by himself, and most of the time he'll probably like get a couple of kills or stay alive long enough. So yeah, definitely a very solid asset on the CT side to just be like, okay, we can do something else and know that we're going to be fine. And on T side, he was our aggressive lurker, so he would be like on Mirage AAPs, he would just be like looking for fights constantly, just harassing the defense really. And that allowed us, like Apex, myself and Zaiwu, to have space to do other things and not be read by the defense because nothing's going on the map, right? So he was just like, yeah, it was great to have someone just like be annoying, basically. He was annoying all the time.
What about RPK? Because this is someone where the people who just follow stats were often very critical of him. Like, he's the person where they thought, well, look, he's really old and, his best years are behind him. And then statistically, they see he's got low numbers, right? It does seem like there are certain things he is like very good at, actually. It's just that they're not always the most common things. How do you explain RPK as a player?
So RPK for me is in the previous team was the glue to the whole thing, basically. The guy, he has the worst positions on every map. We'd just be like, okay, RPK, someone's doing bad, so you need to go and play that position because that's just how it is. And he'll be like, okay, no problem. And then he'll go and work on it, and maybe his stats weren't good, but he was just bringing like that part. Like, the guy doesn't have an ego, so it doesn't matter how bad he's playing, as long as we're winning as a team. He'd be fine with it. And I think the fact that he is in these positions now, like, getting older, I think he's understood that it doesn't matter, like, that he's not playing as well. He'll, as long as he's winning. But if he was in positions with the aim that he has, people would be surprised how good he is, I think. And I think he shows glimpses of it sometimes, and he is that good, and it's just he has terrible positions, yeah.
And then obviously the last person left is Apex. So give us some thought, because obviously the problem with Apex is he is so burned into everyone's mind as like hard entry, because I mean that literally is what they basically almost like ran the guy into the ground with Happy towards the end at that point in time, because that was his vision of the game. Was he still someone who was mainly doing that? Like, how did you try to use him in Vitality?
So the way we tried to, Apex and me, like, going back a long way on CS Source, I already like knew Apex, and when I was like 17, maybe 16, and I already knew him, and we played the same position. So I was watching his demos for like years, like even coming up, because I was playing entry as well. And so once we got into the team together, we were like, okay, we're just going to use each other as decoys, right? On one shot, I'm going to go first. And then we can run the same strat and have Apex entry, and they may not expect it because, well, last time it was me, and they expect it to be me. Or the same with lurks. We could have me lurking and do one strat, and they'll be like, okay, Alex entry this time, so he's not lurking, and they wouldn't expect Apex to be lurking. So we're trying to like really mess around and have fun with that, yeah.
Right, when you got really going as a team, like as you said, like around the Major and then Star Series, like there was still problems at this point in time. Like there'll be flashes, obviously Zero would look great sometimes, but the team wasn't like at that point in time, I think most people thought you'd just be like a bottom of the top 10 team. I don't think anyone thought you were going to win any tournaments. But then as I mentioned and alluded to in the intro, like people actually, I don't think realise how insane in hindsight that win that you had at CS Summit, even though, yeah, it's a fun tournament and all that, in the game, you still play properly. What people don't realise about that win is, yeah, everyone knows after that win that Team Liquid had like 22 series in a row they won. But what people don't realise is if you go before that to when they won the IEM Sydney, you were the only team to beat them out of something mental like 32 series in a row they played. So what was the secret to beating Team Liquid? No one else could do it.
I think that we were just better than them at that time. We were more prepared. We took this tournament a lot more seriously than they did. I think it was more of an in-between tournament for them, between two big tournaments, and we had spent like 2 weeks boot camping going into that event, and that was the first tournament of a 3-week run for us. So we were really well prepared, and we wanted to start off really well. And we just we outsmarted them, and we just out-aimed them. I think if you go back and watch the games now, it's just a case of like we were in the right position and we were killing them. And I think Liquid, at least then, were a team that didn't still have the mental fortitude that they probably do now. And like as soon as you start getting rounds against them, they would just slow down and not be the Liquid that are running a set strat and just entry with Twist getting a 3k and round over, right? So the important thing for us was to get rounds early, and then we just outsmarted them. We were more prepared back then.
Now, as you say, obviously, because that event was just CS Summit, and it's even billed as a fun event, and it's for the casters to go crazy and stuff, like, even though it was a win over some really legit teams, and people forget, like, Ents was at that tournament from what I remember as well, like, there's some of the top teams in the world. The results that really put Vitality on the map was obviously winning ECS, which had Astralis there, and then making the final of ESL1 Cologne, like a massive tournament. So when you were at this point in time, what was Vitality's strengths? Like, why were you guys able to get to number 2 in the world?
It's an interesting question, actually, because just after, so it was at DreamHack Dallas that we had the first problems with MBK.
Fury guys beat you and stuff, sure.
And Yeah, so we got destroyed by the Furia guys. I think if we hadn't have played Furia, if we'd played another team, we probably would have made like semis or final at that event as well. But Furia, you can prepare for them, but until you've actually played against them, it's a very, very different thing to just look at them in a demo, right? So after Dallas, that's when we had the first problems with the team in MBK, and we kind of were in like a weird vibe where, I don't know, it felt like we had a point to prove and MBK had a point to prove, and it just made everyone better.
All right.
That's how it felt to me, and we were, as I said, we were very well prepared. So the fact that he wanted to prove something to us and we wanted to prove something to him just made everyone play better as individuals. And since we had the tactical depth, we were just very good. We just struggled with opening matches, right? Lost like 5 tournaments in a row. I think we went into the lower bracket straight away because we couldn't win the first match.
At ESL Cologne, the big result, like, listen, people might remember in the final, Liquid won, like, fairly easily, but the big match to me was the semi-final against Astralis. Like, listen, it doesn't matter what form they're in. Astralis is Astralis. Like, people saw it when they got to the major, they were right back to being really good again. So what would you describe in that match? I mean, if you think even a year before, you were nobody in Counter-Strike relative to these guys. So what was it like to be in this match and to be able to straight up beat, like, probably the best team to ever play CS?
So I played them quite a few times with LDLC and EPL, and since we were underdogs in that game, and like anyone that plays Astralis is an underdog, but for us, we were like, there was no chance we were going to beat Astralis. So we were just very, very aggressive against them back then. And we kind of kept that idea. I just felt like once you're aggressive against Astralis, I don't know if they don't like it or they just think that we're playing dumb because we're just hyper aggressive or something, but it always seems to work, and I kept that idea, and it's an idea I shared with our coach, and we just were very aggressive and tried to be very unpredictable because you can't really outsmart Astralis, so you have to be unpredictable and aggressive and be hitting shots, and you can get away in against Astralis. That's what I believe, and even if I played them now, that's the same way I'd probably play against them.
What can you tell us about, after MBK was gone, why was Shox the player to bring in? Because when you brought him in, people started already to think, right, is this some sort of like, do they want him to be the in-game leader one day? Or is he supposed to be like, is he going to be the star? And like, it's going to be him and Ziwu? And it kind of feels like neither. So what was the plan bringing him in?
Yeah, so the plan was never for him to be in-game leader. I don't think he'll ever want to be in-game leader again. I think he's had his time and it's out of his system. Like maybe it isn't out of MBK's, but it is out of his. And so the idea, was to have the Shoxy Ziwu show, right? Set them up, get them in the right positions to perform and to get, like, we never felt there was a one-man team with Ziwu. I know that was the public view of it, and statistically it was, but we knew as a team that we were doing things to get him into positions, and it didn't really matter because we were winning anyway.
Yeah, sure.
So we just felt like if we can kind of keep the same system but have a better, not saying that MBK was bad, but Shox was supposed to come in and be like a proper second star, right? And
sure.
It never really happened. I think we originally tried to go too far into. So originally we were doing what we wanted, like the way I wanted to play the game, and like we made the final run in Malmo, the first tournament with him.
Sure.
And then we kind of like he wasn't happy with some things that we were doing and didn't suit him position wise and other things. So we tried to help him out in that sense, and I kind of lost the way that I wanted to play as an in-game leader, and we were having conversations like nearly weekly about how we should be playing, and so I feel like we lost ourselves in that sense, and it just became harder for everyone to perform because I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be doing, if we were going more towards what Shox wanted or if we're doing what we wanted, and we never found that middle ground, and it just made things kind of hard to perform. That's when we had like the EPL, the what was that? It's another tournament after EPL where we didn't do well. So
now, one of the ways that the year ended, though, was on a big high because you won the Epicenter tournament, which if people forget, it still had some pretty good teams. They had Mouse Sports, Navi, EG. Like, there was some legit squads there. What was how did things come together to win that tournament? Because that really, unfortunately, now, you had like you said, the first tournament was like Malmo. That went great, especially for a new team. The problem was the progress wasn't much after that. I mean, you've described here some of the things that were changing. And so Epicenter now looks like the outlier. Like, that was one tournament where somehow you won, but it's like an island in a bunch of underperformances. So why did you win Epicenter, do you think?
So when Shux arrived, for the first 2.5 months, I think it was, we practiced like 10 days total. We just didn't have any time to practice. We were going from event to event. We needed some time off because of like fatigue and jet lag, and we just never had time to practice with him. And before Epicenter, we did a 10-day boot camp, I think it was. And yeah, we found that common ground at some point, where we just managed to get everyone into a position where they felt comfortable, at least. And that event, I played probably my best event ever, and I think that also helped. I was that second star for that event, but Shux, it was supposed to be coming into the team. So I think those two, like the boot camp, the preparation we had, and the fact that I played my best event was probably the two factors that made us win.
Now, when you were guys early this year, back when we used to have lands and stuff like that, when you went to the Blast Spring Series, obviously a super hyped tournament, and obviously even the format's really great. Like, if people don't know, you basically can't lose in that scenario. Even if you come third or fourth, you have another route to make it potentially back to the finals. But obviously all the top teams want to just come top two, problem solved, you're off to the big spring finals, and then you don't worry about it. Now, in your group, actually coming in, you were, in theory, supposed to be one of the teams that should actually get out because, Navi had only just changed to Perfecto. People didn't know if that was working out. Astralis, yeah, is very good, but then the other team obviously was Complexity, which is the team I want to address now. Now, this is the team where they hadn't done anything on because they hadn't been to any lands yet, and they'd only been bad online, and so they were a meme at the time. It was the whole Juggernaut thing with Jason Lake. Now, when they beat you guys, and obviously, listen, they played amazing against Astralis too. It's not like they didn't beat anyone. This is another moment where I wouldn't say you got in trouble because it's only people on Reddit, but people definitely came down harshly on you when you said in that interview with Banks, like it felt like they were just kind of like, what was it you said? Like they were just playing like loose or something.
Yeah,
or the
just
style
just going for frags and yeah.
I mean, it's kind of true though, right? I mean, it's not. Is that even like? Do you see why they would take offense to that? Why fans would take offense to that?
I can see why they'd take offense to it, but it still was true, right? It doesn't matter if you don't agree. I mean, if you're not happy with it, that was a fact. They were playing. They had like, it wasn't just like running around. Like I said at the time, I think they were running around headshotting people. There was still some thought to it, but I, at the time and still now, kind of felt like it wasn't a playstyle that they're going to reproduce. They can't. It's just not how you're going to make consistent tops at an event. And I think that's what frustrated me the most was they were just hyped in the moment, and like if we played that match like 4 or 5 events in a row, I think we'd only lose once, and that's what frustrated me there.
And then the other result, which, listen, it doesn't look as bad now because Navi had already beaten Astralis, and then they obviously literally went and just stomped everyone at IM Katowice, so people won't care now. But at the time, you guys had already beaten Navi in this tournament like a day before or something, and famously, you were like Navi's kryptonite. Like, anytime you faced them, you just beat them somehow. Like, why do you think you always had a good matchup against them, and what happened in this game, do you think?
So I think for a long time... Simple wanted to make it a Simple versus Iwu match, and that was a very bad mistake. Like back then, I don't think he had the AWP, right? Like most of the time that we were playing him, so there was no way he was going to beat Zaiwu. If he wants to beat Zaiwu, he has to be playing like he is now, like at his peak and playing with the AWP. Because if not, Zaiwu, as soon as Simple tries to peek him, he's never going to miss him. So, like. He was trying to make it into a 1v1 fight, but he was bringing a knife to a gunfight. He wasn't going to win against Awu at that time. And going into Blast, so I think he came in with the AWP then.
Yes.
And I think, he kind of was in the same mentality. He was like trying to make it, I think he even said in the interview, or was that Malmo? I can't remember, where he said like, this is going to be a match between Zaiwu and me. And as soon as he says that, he's going to lose because you can't beat Zywoo if you're going up against him. Like in a 1v1, you won't beat him. And I think at some point he just understood, and like this is the whole philosophy now with the new team that he has to play, like there has to be a team thing, and any interview he talks about the team, and I think that's what really changed between then and before. And we had some issues, like some internal issues at Blast. So yeah, the kind of combination meant that we got smashed. I think if we were playing really well and they were playing really well, they probably would have beat us, considering how good they were at that point. But we wouldn't have got, like, I think we got 16 forward or something, and it was just, yeah, wasn't pretty.
Right. Obviously, I alluded to it in the intro. It's not like you've left Vitality already and, you have no contract and you can say anything you want. Like, this is an interview with MBK, for example. Maybe I'll do one of those, who knows. But I'll leave it up to you. What can you tell us about, like, why is Alex not, like, right now the in-game leader of Vitality? Like, why is he still in it technically at the moment, but not the in-game leader? What can you say at the moment?
So, at the moment, I'm benched I benched myself, theoretically, on Vitality because of the travel time that we had. So the year before, we traveled like 36 weeks, I think, in the year. And I said, I think it was in July, just after Cologne was the first time I said that I can't do 2 years like this. It's just too draining and takes too much energy, and there's no balance between personal life and work, and I myself need that balance, and maybe some players don't, but I do. And so I'd said back in July that I'm not going to be doing another 36 week year, sorry. And so we agreed that we would try to bring that down to more towards like 22, 25-ish. And then we signed with Blast and EPL, who don't allow us to skip events. I think ESL allow you to skip one, maybe.
I think it was 2 total or something, but yeah, it's not many.
Yeah, anyway. Considering the amount of events they have and the amount of events Blast have, it just becomes impossible, and then you've got the major on top of that. And now, theoretically, I mean, everything's online, but you have the road to Rio, like the major qualifiers that are supposed to be LANs as well, that may not be part of the circuit originally. So you have to add them on top. And yeah, I just felt like I'm not going to not enjoy playing and just take the salary and just not give it my all, because if I'm doing something, I want to be 100% committed to it and enjoying it more than anything. So
sure. So okay, this brings us to what will hopefully be the revealing part of the interview that people won't know, which is Alex isn't retired. Alex is not, he's benched, but that doesn't mean Alex doesn't want to play Counter-Strike, right? So how would you explain the situation? Like, put it this way, if there was a team that could pay your buyout and it was somewhere you wanted to go, you want to go, but under what circumstances? How would you like to play CS again as a pro if you could?
Like if I had free reign on it, it would just be like possibly go to a Flashpoint team, and because there's less travel involved, right? 3 weeks, 2 times 3 weeks in LA, and then you just be able to choose your calendar, because most Blast and ESL teams aren't Flashpoint. I think it's only MIBR. Yeah. So yeah, you have that possibility of declining events and being able to have a healthy calendar, because for me right now it's not healthy.
Okay. If you come back, let's say a team has the buyout, they have the vision, they want you in the team, do you want to be the in-game leader again? Is that the set role for Alex in his career now? Are you trying to be a great in-game leader?
I don't think anything's set. I think my opinion is that I'm pretty good at what I do as an in-game leader, but yeah, it's not set in stone that if ever I join a team, I'll be an in-game leader. I think even if I stopped in-game leading for a year and went to a team with a great in-game leader, I'd probably learn from him and maybe start in-game leading again after. Or yeah, I'm not set in stone in what I want to be doing as a player yet.
Now, over the years, I've known a lot of players who told me something similar, like, I'm still up for playing, but the problem is, like, a lot of my connections are the NA teams. So, there's a million players I could have got in Team Liquid before they had the really good teams, basically. That's part of how, people like Simple got in. And what you always find is people either have the perspective of, I don't want to move to NA, though. That's, my life or whatever's here. Or the other way around, it's like, I'll move, but I'm only going to do, 6 months. And unless we basically just win everything, probably just going to get sick of it and come back, because the problem is unlike a lot of other esports games, if you can live at home when you do CS. So if you're European, I get it. Like, I get why someone would want to stay in Denmark, because as you say, you barely get any time off anyway. So when you have the time off, you want to be with your friends and family. So is it something where, would you prefer a European team? Would you be up for moving to America if it was an American team?
Either, I think, is up for discussion. I'm not like tied to anything really in Europe, and I don't mind moving to LA. I think like we have short careers as players, and maybe playing like 4 years in America, and if I don't enjoy America, then I'll just come home after that. But like career-wise, you've got to do what you got to do to make ends meet, right?
Now, the way you've described it is very reasonable, actually, because if people know the sheer amount of travel, I mean, there's a reason why pros often complain about it. The problem is the way they complain in interviews. Fans are never going to fuck with that because it sounds like you just complain about doing your job. But like you say, if people just looked at how little time you have at home, and then the fact that when you're at home, you're often playing an online qualifier and you're screaming, like, it's not like you're having time off. You're just working from home. So it's not that Alex wants to be a part-time CS player and that you just kind of like don't have a drive to play CS, right? You have ambition.
Yeah. If I decide I want to play, then it's because I believe that I can win and I want to do it and put the time in. If not, I would have just stayed on Vitality, right? I would just be like, oh yeah, so I'll just go to events and get paid to do nothing and not work and stuff. But yeah, just coming back to what you originally said, I think people don't like players in like complaining because they usually do it at tournaments and interviews. And if you actually just sit down and look at the calendar and look at where teams and players are going, and then you add on the fact that you usually have boot camps, you usually have media stuff you need to be doing for your team, and you have loads of things that people aren't necessarily aware of, and it all stacks up. So you have to understand why players complain about getting tired and stuff.
Right. At the end of this interview, do you have like a final remarks, or is there anyone you want to thank?
Thank you for the interview. I think that's about it. Yeah, and maybe if there's any teams out there that are interested, my email address is alex.mcmeekin@hotmail.fr, or my Twitter, the DMs are open. So yeah. This
video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Dean Tanglis, Emanuel Särnbratt, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, the Puyallup Tribe, Tobias Bernasconi, Xinged, and a special thanks always goes out to Jerky's Minion. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my shows? Maybe ask a question in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers? Who are the guests on my next content? Maybe you want to take part in one of those donated discussions with me where we go really deep into the weeds. Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today in the description box link below.